The curse announced itself the way most bad things do, quietly, without drama, slipping into the world like it had always belonged there. It started with a phone call at 2:13 a.m. Nina Harper was awake already, stretched on the floor of her bedroom with her headphones on, the tinny guitar of Nirvana bleeding softly into the dark. Her parents thought she was asleep. They always did. Sleep, for Nina, was something other people got to enjoy. When the phone rang, she felt it before she heard it. An ugly vibration in her chest, a tightening that had nothing to do with sound. Caller ID flashed unknown. She stared at it, waiting for it to stop, but it rang exactly 3 times. Then it went silent. Her heart didn't slow. A second later, it rang again. 3 rings. Silence. By the third call, Nina's skin prickled as if someone had brushed icy fingers down her spine. She answered before it could finish ringing. Hello. Static hissed in her ear, low and deliberate, like breathing through clenched teeth. Then a voice, thin, cracked, old, slid through. 2 have passed, it said. 1 remains. The line went dead. Nina sat frozen, phone pressed to her ear long after the call ended. Her room felt wrong now. Too still. The posters on her walls, The Cure, Smashing Pumpkins, Soundgarden, watched her in flat, paper silence. She told herself it was a prank. A wrong number. A nightmare leaking into wakefulness. She didn't tell herself why the voice sounded exactly like her grandmother. By morning, the first death arrived. Her Uncle Mark was found in his garage, the car still running, the door wide open. Carbon monoxide poisoning, the police said. Tragic accident. He'd forgotten to turn off the engine. Nina knew better. Mark was the second Harper to die in 3 weeks. The first had been her Aunt Lydia, stroke in her sleep, sudden and merciless. The doctors called it a coincidence. The family called it heartbreak. Nina called it a pattern. She didn't go to school that day. Instead, she biked across town to Jason Reed's house, the cassette player in her backpack rattling with every bump. Jason answered the door in a faded Pearl Jam shirt, eyes ringed with sleepless purple shadows. You look like hell, he said. Pot, kettle, Nina replied, pushing past him. Jason had been her best friend since they were 9. Since the day they'd both hidden under the bleachers during a thunderstorm and decided the world made more sense when faced together. If anyone could hear this without laughing, it was him. She told him everything. The call. The voice. The deaths. The way the number 3 kept pulsing in her head like a migraine. Jason didn't interrupt. He just reached over and hit play on his stereo, letting 9-inch nails fill the room, grounding the silence. When she finished, he said quietly, My dad used to talk about something like this. Nina stiffened. What do you mean? Family stories, Jason said. The kind nobody likes to tell because saying them out loud makes them feel real. He swallowed. He called it the rule of 3. Her stomach dropped. Jason explained, the curse didn't take randomly. It followed bloodlines, carving through families in sets of 3. Once it started, it didn't stop, not unless you ran out the clock. How long? Nina asked. 90 days, Jason said. From the first death to the third. Nina did the math in her head. 37 days had already passed. That left 53. Who's the third? She whispered. Jason met her eyes. Your mom. The word hit like a physical blow. Nina staggered back, knocking into the coffee table. Her breath came shallow and fast. No, she said. You're wrong. I hope I am, Jason said. But the stories all say the same thing. The curse targets the nearest blood relative left alive. Nina's thoughts spiraled. Her mother, laughing in the kitchen. Her mother, humming along to old REM songs. Her mother, completely unaware that something ancient and patient was counting down her days. That voice. Nina said. It said 2 have passed. Jason nodded slowly. Then it knows. As if summoned by the words, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. On the third flicker, the stereo shut off. The silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. Nina felt a pressure behind her eyes, a sense of being watched, not from outside, but from within the walls, the floor, the very air. A smell crept into the room. Old dust. Rust. Something burned. Then, from the hallway, came 3 slow knocks. Knock. 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 Jason grabbed Nina's hand as the doorknob began to turn on its own. And somewhere deep in the house, something whispered, counting down. The door never opened. The knob twisted halfway, shuddered like it had hit an invisible wall, then snapped back into place with a sharp metallic click. The house exhaled. The smell vanished. The pressure lifted. Jason didn't let go of Nina's hand for a full minute. They stood there, frozen, waiting for the world to end or restart or explain itself. None of those things happened. Jason was the first to move. He crossed the room and yanked the door open. The hallway was empty. No footsteps. No shadows retreating. Just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the clock above the stove. Jason checked every room anyway, bathroom, bedroom, basement door locked tight. Alice in Chains crackled to life, gritty, grounding, real. Nina focused on the sound, on the lyrics, on anything that wasn't the echo of those 3 knocks. My dad said the first rule was don't listen, Jason said after a while. Listen to what? The voice. The signs. The counting. He rubbed his face. He said once you acknowledge it, it knows you're paying attention. And that makes it stronger. Nina laughed, sharp and humorless. Pretty sure it knows already. Jason didn't argue. They spent the afternoon researching, digging through old newspapers at the library, scanning microfilm until their eyes burned. Deaths clustered in 3s. Car accidents. Fires. Falls. Always spaced weeks apart. Always one family. Always dismissed as coincidence. Nina's family name appeared once, 30 years ago. Her grandmother's siblings. 3 deaths in under 3 months. No survivors left to warn anyone. By evening, Nina's mom called, her voice tight with worry. Nina lied. Said she felt sick, said she was staying at Jason's. Her mother told her to be careful, said she loved her. Nina stared at the phone after the call ended, nausea twisting in her gut. That night, the dream started. Nina stood in her childhood home, but it was wrong, walls stretched too tall, doors too narrow. A hallway extended endlessly, lined with family photos. Every third frame was blacked out, the faces scratched away. She walked past them, counting without meaning to. 1. 2. 3. At the 3rd step, the floor gave way. She woke up screaming. Jason was already awake, sitting upright on the floor with his back to the bed. He'd stacked chairs against the door like it could stop something that didn't use doors. You too? He asked quietly. Nina nodded, wiping sweat from her neck. It's in my head. Jason's jaw tightened. That's where it lives. The next death came 3 days later. It wasn't a Harper this time. Jason's neighbor, a woman in her 60s, fell down her front steps and snapped her neck. Wrong place, wrong time. But Nina noticed the detail the police didn't mention aloud. It was the 3rd step from the bottom. That's when they realized the 2nd rule. The curse didn't only kill. It warned. Phones rang 3 times. Lights flickered 3 times. Sounds came in sets of 3. It wasn't random, it was ritual. A countdown you couldn't escape, only survive. So we run out the clock, Nina said that night, pacing Jason's room. 50 days. We keep my mom safe. No driving. No stairs. No living, Jason finished. They fortified the Harper house like it was a bunker. Moved Nina's mom's bedroom downstairs. Covered mirrors. Pulled every family photo off the walls. Jason slept on the couch with a baseball bat he didn't believe would help. The curse didn't care. On day 42, the power went out at exactly 3:33 a.m. On day 45, Nina's mom tripped over nothing and laughed it off, but Nina didn't stop shaking for hours. On day 48, Nina received another call. 3 rings. She didn't answer. The voicemail played anyway. Time is thinning, the voice croaked. 3 breaths. 3 steps. 3 chances. Nina smashed the phone against the wall until it stopped making sound. Jason held her while she cried, his hands trembling too. "We're missing something," he said. "There has to be a way to break it." Nina looked up at him. "Your dad. How did his family survive?" Jason hesitated. "They didn't," he said. "Not all of them." That night, Nina stood in the kitchen, staring at her mother asleep on the couch. She counted her breaths without meaning to. 1. 2. On the third, the lights flickered, and the front door creaked open by itself. The final countdown had begun. The front door stopped halfway open. Not slammed. Not stuck. Held. Nina felt it, the same way you feel someone staring at you from behind. The air thickened, heavy and damp, like the house had inhaled and forgotten how to breathe. Jason moved first, slow and careful, like sudden motion might break something fragile and invisible. He picked up the bat, knuckles white, and stepped between Nina and her mother. "Nina," he whispered. "Wake her up. Quietly." Her mom slept on, chest rising and falling in an uneven rhythm. Nina crouched beside her, heart hammering, and touched her shoulder. "Mom," she murmured. "Hey. Mom." Nothing. The door creaked wider. Once. Nina's pulse skipped. Twice. Jason sucked in a sharp breath. On the third creak, the hallway lights snapped on by themselves. They flickered violently, strobing shadows across the walls. In that broken light, Nina saw something standing just beyond the threshold. It wasn't solid. Not entirely. It had the shape of a man but bent wrong, too tall, shoulders hunched like it was folding in on itself. Its face looked stretched thin, features smeared as if someone had tried to erase it and failed. The mouth hung open in a silent, endless count. Jason swung the bat. It passed through empty air. The thing tilted its head, amused. Then it stepped inside. The temperature dropped instantly. Frost spiderwebbed across the windows. Nina's breath fogged in front of her face. The smell came back. Burnt dust and old pennies. Her mother stirred. "Nina." The thing turned its head slowly toward the sound. "No," Nina screamed. "Look at me. Look at me." She didn't know why she said it, only that some instinct screamed to draw its attention. The thing paused, then rotated back toward her, movements jerky and delayed, like a skipping tape. Jason grabbed Nina's arm. "Stairs. Now." They bolted. The thing didn't chase them. It counted. Nina heard it behind them, each word landing with weight and purpose. 1. The first stair creaked. Beneath her foot. 2. Jason tripped, caught himself, gasping. 3. The stair behind them cracked clean in half. Jason dragged Nina the rest of the way up, slamming the bedroom door behind them and shoving a dresser against it. The house shuddered, settling into a horrible, waiting quiet. From downstairs, Nina heard her mother calling her name. "Mom." Nina sobbed, clawing at the dresser. Jason held her back. "Don't," he said, voice breaking. "Please don't." The voice downstairs wasn't right. It hit the same syllables but missed the warmth. It repeated, looping, each time slower than the last. "Night, nah." Then it stopped. 3 minutes passed. Then 3 more. Finally, Nina heard footsteps retreating, slow, deliberate, until the front door closed with a soft, satisfied click. They didn't move for an hour. When they finally crept downstairs, her mother was asleep again on the couch, unharmed. No memory of waking up. No memory of calling Nina's name. But on the wall behind her, carved deep into the drywall, were 3 vertical lines. Jason covered his mouth. "That thing," Nina whispered. "It could have killed her." Jason shook his head. It didn't want to yet. The realization landed cold and heavy. The curse wasn't rushing. It was savoring. The next morning, Jason took Nina to his dad's old storage unit. Dusty, forgotten, shoved behind a defunct video rental store. Inside were boxes of notebooks, journals, cassette tapes labeled in messy handwriting. "This is everything he left," Jason said. They spent hours reading. The rule of 3 wasn't just a pattern, it was a contract. Once invoked, it demanded completion. The deaths fed it, strengthened it, made the final one inevitable. Unless. "Here," Nina said, hands shaking as she pointed to a passage. Interruption. Jason leaned closer. "If the count is disrupted, if the third is denied, the rule must begin again." Jason frowned. "Begin again, with who?" Nina swallowed. "Another family." The implication sat between them. Heavy and ugly. "So to save your mom," Jason said slowly, "we'd be passing it on." "Or," Nina said, "we interrupt it without letting it complete." Jason flipped pages desperately. "There's nothing about stopping it completely." Outside, thunder rolled, 3 distant claps. That night, Nina dreamed again. She stood in a room full of clocks. Every clock ticked in sets of 3. In the center stood the thing, clearer now, its face finally forming, her grandmother's eyes. Her uncle's mouth. "You're almost out of chances," it whispered. Nina woke with blood on her pillow. Her nose had bled exactly 3 drops. On day 51, the curse stopped warning. No knocks. No calls. No flickering lights. Jason knew that silence meant one thing. "It's done counting," he said. Nina looked at her mom, laughing softly in the kitchen, unaware. "No," Nina said. "It's choosing." And somewhere in the house, something marked time, patient, hungry, and very sure that 3 would always come last. Silence settled over the house like a held breath. Not the normal quiet of late afternoon, the kind with distant cars and ticking clocks, but a thick, padded silence that swallowed sound before it could travel. Nina noticed it first when she dropped a spoon in the sink and it didn't clatter. It just landed. Soft. Wrong. Jason noticed it when the radio refused to pick up anything except static, no matter how far he turned the dial. Not even the emergency broadcast tone. Just a low hiss that rose and fell in slow, deliberate waves. 3 rises. 3 falls. They shut it off. The warning stopped, Nina said, hugging her arms to her chest. "It's like it doesn't need them anymore." Jason didn't answer right away. He was staring at the hallway, where the shadows looked slightly darker than they should have been, like they were layered on top of each other. My dad wrote about this part, he said finally. The quiet phase. Nina's stomach twisted. How long does it last? Jason swallowed. Until the third. They tried to keep Nina's mom busy. No being alone. No sharp objects. No stairs without someone holding her arm. Nina followed her from room to room like a ghost, counting without meaning to. Steps. Breaths. Heartbeats. She hated herself for it. On day 52, Nina's mom burned dinner. Not badly, just enough to set off the smoke alarm. The shrill wail sliced through the house, sudden and violent. Nina flinched, hands flying to her ears. The alarm screamed in bursts. 3 seconds on. 3 seconds off. Jason rushed to silence it, ripping the batteries out with shaking hands. The smell of smoke lingered, curling into Nina's lungs. For a moment, just a moment, she thought she saw a shape inside it, tall and patient, watching from the corner of the kitchen. Then it was gone. That night, Nina's mom asked a question that shattered what little calm they had left. Why do you keep looking at me like that? She asked gently. Nina froze. Jason held his breath. Like what? Nina managed. Like you're memorizing me, her mom said. She smiled, but there was worry behind it. Did something happen, honey? Nina wanted to tell her everything. The curse. The counting. The thing that wore her family's faces. The knowledge that her life had become a math problem with only one solution. Instead, she shook her head. Just, scared of losing you. Her mom pulled her into a hug, warm and real and terrifyingly fragile. Nina pressed her face into her shoulder and inhaled, afraid to let go. That was when the whisper started. It came from everywhere and nowhere, sliding under doors, seeping through vents, threading itself into the hum of the refrigerator. 1. Nina stiffened. Jason heard it too. His eyes widened. 2. The lights dimmed, not flickered, just dimmed, like someone was slowly turning a dial. Nina's mom pulled back. Did you hear that? No, Nina said too quickly. You didn't hear anything. The whisper paused. Then it laughed. A dry, cracked sound, like leaves being crushed underfoot. Still lying, it murmured. Still counting. The front window shattered inward. Glass exploded across the living room in a spray of glittering shards. Nina's mom screamed. Jason dragged her down, shielding her with his body as the air filled with cold. Outside, the streetlights went out, one by one. 3 at a time. Something moved past the window. Not fast. Not slow. Certain. Jason helped Nina's mom to her feet. Basement, he said. Now. They ran. The basement smelled of damp concrete and old paint. Jason slammed the door behind them and twisted the lock, even though he knew it was pointless. The whisper followed them down, growing louder with every step. 3. The basement light burst. Darkness swallowed them whole. In the black, Nina felt a hand close around her wrist. Not Jason's. Too cold. Too thin. She screamed and swung blindly. Her hand passed through empty air, but the touch lingered, burning cold against her skin. Then the counting started. Again. Not whispered. Spoken. Clear and delighted. 1. A pipe overhead burst, spraying icy water. 2. The stairs groaned, bending inward like ribs collapsing. 3. The thing stepped out of the darkness. It was clearer now than it had ever been. Its face was a collage of stolen features, her grandmother's eyes, her uncle's jaw, a stranger's grin stretched too wide. Its body bent at impossible angles, joints reversing themselves as it moved. Nina's mom sobbed, backing away. "What is that?" Jason stood in front of her, bat raised, even as his hands shook. "Don't look at it," he said. "Please. Don't." The thing tilted its head. "She sees me," it said. "That counts." It reached for Nina's mom. Nina moved without thinking. She stepped forward. "Take me," she screamed. "I see you. I hear you. I count you. Take me instead." The thing stopped. Its many eyes turned toward her, curious. "Oh," it said softly. "You don't make the sum." It leaned closer, breath smelling of ash and old blood. "But you can change it." The lights snapped back on. The thing vanished. The basement was suddenly empty, flooded, ruined, silent. Jason stared at Nina. What did it mean? Nina looked down at her trembling hands. "It means," she whispered, "that the rule doesn't end with my mom." Upstairs, something in the house clicked, like a counter resetting. And far away, somewhere they couldn't see, another family had just been marked. The first sign was the bruise. Nina noticed it the next morning while brushing her teeth. A dark mark bloomed around her wrist where the cold hand had grabbed her in the basement, 3 thin lines pressed into her skin like fingerprints that didn't belong to anyone human. She touched them and flinched. They hurt in a deep, aching way, like the bone underneath had been bruised from the inside. Jason stood in the doorway, watching her reflection instead of her. "That wasn't there yesterday." Nina shook her head. "It marked me." Jason exhaled slowly. "My dad wrote about marks." That sentence alone was enough to make her stomach drop. They went back to the storage unit. The air inside felt heavier than before, like the place resented being disturbed again. Jason dug through boxes with frantic precision, pulling out notebooks, loose pages, even cassette cases stuffed with handwritten notes. He found it in a thin black journal near the bottom of a crate. "The marked witness," the page read. "When the rule is interrupted, it does not end. It adapts." Nina read the words twice. Then a third time, because her brain refused to accept them. "What does that mean?" she asked, even though she already knew. Jason's voice came out rough. "It means you're part of the equation now." They learned the truth in fragments. The curse couldn't be destroyed, only redirected or delayed. When Nina offered herself, when she acknowledged it openly and survived, she changed the shape of the count. The third death still had to happen, but now the curse needed a replacement. Someone else. Another family. "The thing said I could change it," Nina whispered. "Not stop it." Jason closed his eyes. "My dad called it bleeding the count." They didn't say what that meant out loud. They didn't need to. That afternoon, Nina's mom finally broke. She found the boarded-up window. The ruined basement. The dried blood on Nina's pillow she'd missed in the chaos. She demanded answers. Nina told her everything. Everything. The words poured out, messy, panicked, soaked in tears. The curse. The counting. The thing wearing familiar faces. Jason sat beside her, silent and pale, backing her up when her voice failed. Her mom listened without interrupting. When Nina finished, there was a long, terrible pause. Then her mom said softly, "So I'm supposed to die?" "No," Nina said immediately. "You're not. But someone else is," her mom replied. The way she said it, calm, resigned. Hurt worse than if she'd screamed. That night, Nina dreamed she was standing in a movie theater. The screen flickered with static. Old footage. Home videos that weren't hers. Birthday candles being blown out. 3 claps. 3 laughs. 3 screams. Families she didn't recognize. Then the thing stepped into the light beside her. You bought her time, it said. Now you owe me balance. Nina woke with blood in her mouth. She'd bitten her tongue 3 times. On day 54, the news reported a house fire across town. A family of 4 escaped, but the grandmother didn't make it out in time. It's starting, Jason said quietly. Nina shook her head. No. That's coincidence. But the next day, a man at Jason's school collapsed in the hallway, heart attack, sudden and fatal. 2 deaths. Not Harper's. Jason stared at Nina, horror dawning. It's already counting. They realized then what the mark meant. Nina was the anchor. As long as she was close to someone, the curse leaned toward them, testing, weighing, deciding. She didn't cause the deaths, but she pointed the direction, simply by existing. I can't be around people, she said. Jason's chest tightened. You can't be alone. They compromised the only way they could. They ran. Jason stole his dad's old car, a dented sedan that smelled like cigarettes and regret. Nina packed light, clothes, tapes, a notebook full of names she refused to look at. They drove with the radio blasting, Soundgarden, Hole, Radiohead, filling the silence so the counting couldn't creep in. 90 miles an hour down empty highways, headlights cutting through the dark. If they kept moving, maybe the curse wouldn't have time to settle. On the 3rd night, the car stalled. Dead road. No signal. No houses. The radio cut out mid-song. Nina laughed hysterically. Of course. Jason slammed the steering wheel. No. No, no, no. The engine clicked uselessly. Then the headlights flickered. Once. Twice. Jason whispered, Nina. On the 3rd flicker, someone knocked on the window. 3 knocks. A man stood outside, smiling too wide. He looked normal, too normal, but his eyes were wrong. Empty in the same way the thing's eyes were, just better hidden. Car trouble, he asked. Nina felt the mark on her wrist burn. Behind the man, across the field, she saw a farmhouse. Lights on. A family inside. The man knocked again. Once. Twice. On the 3rd knock, Nina understood. If she stayed, the count would finish there. If she left, it would follow her. Jason looked at her, eyes begging. What do we do? Nina opened the door. And stepped out into the dark, knowing that someone, somewhere, was about to become 3rd. The man's smile never changed. Even when Nina stepped out of the car. Even when Jason shouted her name. Even when the wind picked up and carried the faint smell of smoke from somewhere far too close. Easy, the man said, palms up, voice gentle. Just trying to help. Nina stared at his eyes. They reflected the headlights, but nothing else. Not her. Not Jason. Not the road. Just light and emptiness, like windows into a room with nothing inside. Behind him, the farmhouse glowed warm and yellow against the dark. Curtains drawn. A television flickering blue through the glass. Nina could almost hear laughter, muffled by distance. Life. The mark on her wrist throbbed. 3 pulses. I don't need help, Nina said. The man chuckled softly. Nobody ever thinks they do. Jason got out of the car, gripping the bat. Back away from her. The man finally looked at Jason, and for just a second, his smile twitched. Like something underneath it was annoyed. Ah, he said. You're the buffer. Jason stiffened. What did you just call me? The man ignored him, eyes sliding back to Nina. You feel it, don't you? The pull. The way it settles when you're close to options. Nina swallowed. You're not real. The man laughed. Oh, sweetheart, he said, stepping closer. I'm not important. That's different. He leaned in, lowering his voice. You're early. The third hasn't been chosen yet. Nina's stomach twisted. Chosen by who? The man tapped his chest once. Then pointed at her wrist. By the count, he said. By you. Jason moved fast, too fast. He swung the bat at the man's head. It connected. The sound was wrong. Not bone. Not flesh. More like hitting a frozen bag of sand. The man stumbled back, but he didn't fall. He straightened slowly, rolling his neck as if working out a kink. Strike one, he said pleasantly. Jason backed up, breath ragged. Nina. Get in the car. But Nina couldn't move. The farmhouse lights flickered. Once. Twice. She felt it then, felt the way the air leaned toward the house, the way the silence thickened around it. The curse was looking. Measuring distance. Probability. Proximity. A woman appeared in the farmhouse window. A mother, Nina thought immediately. You could always tell. Nina, Jason begged. The man stepped aside, gesturing toward the house. You walk away, he said, and it finds another vector. Somewhere else. Someone you won't see. He smiled wider. You stay, and it finishes clean. The woman in the window raised a hand, waving at someone inside. 3 fingers. Nina screamed. She grabbed Jason's arm and yanked him toward the car. Drive. Now. They peeled out of there, gravel spraying, engine screaming back to life like it had never stalled at all. Nina twisted in her seat, watching the farmhouse disappear into darkness. She didn't hear the screams. That was worse. They drove until sunrise. Neither of them spoke. When the radio finally crackled back to life, it landed on a news station mid-sentence. 3rd fatality confirmed early this morning. Authorities report the blaze spread rapidly. Nina shut it off. Jason pulled over on the side of the road and vomited. Nina sat rigid in the passenger seat, hands folded in her lap, staring at nothing. I didn't see them, she whispered. I didn't even see their faces. Jason wiped his mouth, eyes red. That doesn't make it better. I know, she said. The mark on her wrist faded slightly. That's when Nina understood the last rule. The curse didn't need her to choose intentionally. It just needed her to prioritize. They hid for 2 days in a roadside motel. Curtains closed. TV unplugged. No phones. No radio. Jason taped over the bathroom mirror because Nina couldn't stand the way her reflection felt, delayed. On the 3rd night, the counting came back. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just 3 soft taps from inside the wall. Tap. 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 Jason didn't look at her. It's resetting. Nina nodded. New family. Jason's voice cracked. How many times? Nina closed her eyes. She saw the notebooks. The newspapers. The clusters of death stretching back decades. I don't think there's a limit, she said. The motel TV turned on by itself. Static filled the screen, then resolved into grainy home video footage. Different families. Different homes. Different eras. Always the same pattern. 2 deaths. A pause. A 3rd. Nina watched herself reflected faintly in the glass, superimposed over strangers' tragedies. You're the common denominator, Jason said softly. Nina nodded. As long as I'm alive, it can keep balancing. The TV clicked off. Silence pressed in. Jason stood suddenly, pacing. Then we end it. Nina's heart stuttered. What? My dad tried, Jason said. I remember now. The journal stopped because he stopped writing. Because he thought that if the anchor dies, the count stops, Nina finished. Jason met her eyes. Did it? Nina hesitated. She remembered something she hadn't told him. A page she'd read alone. No, she said. It just waits for another witness. Jason's shoulders sagged. Outside, a car passed on the highway. 3 honks. Drunk driver, maybe. Or coincidence. Nina stood and walked to the window, peeling back the curtain just enough to look out. In the parking lot, a family unloaded bags from a minivan. Laughing. Tired. Normal. The mark on her wrist burned again. Jason whispered her name. Nina lowered the curtain. I can't keep running, she said. And I can't stay. Jason swallowed. Then what do we do? Nina turned to him, eyes hollow but steady. We cheat the math, she said. And somewhere nearby, something that had been counting for generations leaned closer, interested for the first time. They chose the place carefully. An abandoned drive-in theater at the edge of nowhere, screens torn and rusted, rows of cracked asphalt stretching into darkness. Jason said it felt right, open enough that nothing could hide, dead enough that no one else would wander in by accident. Nina didn't argue. She hadn't argued much since the motel. The rule, they realized, wasn't just about death. It was about witnesses. Someone had to see the count. Someone had to carry it forward. Someone had to remember. So we take away the witness, Jason said, voice tight as they stood beneath the skeletal screen. No one left to mark. Nina nodded. No one left to point. They set up 3 things. A camera, old and bulky, stolen from the school's AV room. A cassette recorder, Jason's dad's, the tape already inside. And Nina's notebook, every name, every date, every pattern she traced until the math had burned itself into her brain. Proof. If the curse needed memory, they would overload it. Trap it in evidence. Bury it in records so dense it couldn't adapt. Or so they hoped. The wind blew through the empty lot, rattling metal signs. Jason hesitated. If this works. Nina finished the thought. No more third. Jason swallowed. And if it doesn't? Nina looked at the massive blank screen looming over them. Then at least it ends with us. They didn't say how. They didn't need to. The counting began without ceremony. Not whispered. Not shouted. Projected. The drive-in screen flickered to life, glowing white, then filling with images. Home videos. News footage. Security cameras. Faces blurring together in endless threes. The thing stepped into the light. It wasn't pretending anymore. No borrowed faces. No masks. Just a tall, hollow shape stitched together from shadow and memory, edges crawling like ants. Its voice came from everywhere at once. You learned the pattern, it said. That's good. Patterns deserve completion. Jason raised the camera. You don't get to keep doing this. The thing tilted its head. I don't do it, it replied. I am it. The cassette recorder clicked on by itself. Jason's father's voice filled the air, shaking, desperate. If you're hearing this, it means I failed. Jason froze. It doesn't end. It accumulates. Every interruption feeds it more structure. Nina felt cold settle deep in her chest. The thing smiled, not with a mouth, but with certainty. You thought you could cheat the math, it said. But math loves clever students. It keeps them. The screen flashed. 2 deaths. Pause. 3rd. Over and over. Jason stepped forward. Then take me. The thing didn't even look at him. He doesn't balance, it said. Nina stepped beside Jason. Then take us both. The thing considered this. For the first time, it hesitated. 2 witnesses cancel, it said slowly. But cancellation creates remainder. The ground beneath them trembled. 3 deep cracks split the asphalt. Jason grabbed Nina's hand. Now. They ran, not away, but through. Straight toward the screen. The images intensified, blinding, overlapping decades of tragedy. Nina felt the mark on her wrist burn hotter than ever, then. Snap. Pain vanished. Sound vanished. For a moment, there was nothing. Then Nina was standing alone. The drive-in was gone. The screen was gone. Jason was gone. She stood in a familiar place. Her childhood hallway. Family photos lined the walls. Every 3rd frame was empty. You can't erase me, the thing said behind her. Nina turned. You're right, she said quietly. But I can ruin your count. She reached out, and tore the 3rd frame off the wall. The house shook violently. The thing shrieked, its form distorting, numbers unraveling into noise. You need structure, it roared. You need sequence. Nina felt herself fading, thinning like smoke, but she smiled. Not if no one remembers where to start. She pulled the 2nd frame down. Then the 1st. The hallway collapsed into white light. Jason woke up alone. Morning sun poured over the cracked asphalt of the drive-in. The camera lay shattered. The cassette recorder was silent. Nina was nowhere. No body. No blood. Just her notebook, blank. He stood on shaking legs, heart hammering. The world felt quieter. Weeks passed. No news stories. No clusters. No threes. Jason tried to remember the details, the dates, the rules, but they slipped away like dreams after waking. Only one thing remained. Sometimes, late at night, his phone would buzz. Not ring. Just buzz. 3 times. And somewhere. Nowhere, something waited, patient as ever. Because even when you break the rule of 3, someone always starts counting again.